Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. I'm your host, Rob, and today's going to be a fun show. We're going to talk wines from Paso Robles. We've got one family, I guess I would say, but maybe call them two families on the show today. We're going to talk about their wines, their wineries. Eric is a winemaker and has been for a number of years, and him and his wife, Eric and Joanne Russell, have a winery out in Paso Robles. Not sure if I'm saying that right, but they can correct me in just a minute. Bryce and Sarah Garrett are the owners of Serrano Winery, and there's this connection between both wineries. They're related, so we're going to have a great conversation talking about what's going on in Paso. Kind of, to me, that area for wine has been a little bit under the radar, and something that I've just recently become familiar with and kind of got interested in and kind of been exploring. And they were nice enough to come on and just kind of talk to me about what's going on in Paso and kind of educate me on what they're doing and kind of what the vibe is out there. And so we appreciate that. Eric, Joanna, Bryce, Sarah, thanks, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, let's start with you, Eric, and Joanne. You guys have been doing this for quite a while.
Yeah, my first vintage of Rabbit Ridge was 1981. And before that, I worked at Chateau St. Jean Winery for a year and Simi Winery for a year.
And you what got you into wine? I mean, was it something that you were already drinking and interested in and decided you wanted to make, or how did you kind of fall in love with wine?
I was teaching school and the kids were going to drive me to drink anyway, so I figured it'd be cheaper to make it.
There you go. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and then one year in college, I got sick and I watched the old Columbo episode that was about two brothers who made wine, and one wanted to make cheap wine and the other wanted to make good wine, and one brother off the other, and it was just kind of cool and got me interested in wine and started making it in my garage.
That's quite a story.
It was a great episode. The episode was Any Old Sport in the Storm. It's a great episode still.
Really? Okay. I'm old enough that I remember that series. I'm not sure if Bryce and Sarah have any idea what we're talking about.
Not a clue.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I want to say, just to start off and let the listeners know, Eric, you've got quite a few accolades. I mean, you've had your wine at a White House dinner. You've been winemaker of the year. You've had winery of the year. You've gotten all kinds of awards for what you're doing. So you obviously, not only have you been around for quite a few years and making great wines, but you've been highly rated. I mean, people have obviously thought you've done a really good job in what you're doing. So kudos to you.
Probably why we're still in business.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you weren't always in Paso, right? You started out in Sonoma.
Yeah, I was actually in Healdsburg, up in Sonoma County for almost 20 years.
And so, obviously some people, when you think about wine for people in America, I think our first thought is always Napa Valley, right? That's where we go to first. And then I think right below that, maybe just slightly below that, would be Sonoma. So if you're in Sonoma, what would make a person decide to go from Sonoma down to Paso?
I was seeing a lot of the people who were coming in buying vineyards in Sonoma weren't really farmers, and we didn't have very much control over our own grapes. And so I started looking around, and I came down to Paso Robles, and I spent a whole week down here tasting wine and going around the land. And this was like in 1995, and it had so much possibility because they were making pretty good wines with absolutely no technology at all. And I thought to myself, man, if technology ever hits this area, it's going to explode. And the land down here was the most intriguing factor. It had so many different soil types and so much more interesting climate, microclimate little gaps than from what Sonoma had. So, I mean, I just fell in love with the area, its potential right away. And now 20 years later or 15 years later, it's exploded down here.
Okay. What was the difference, Eric? I mean, you were doing what wines in Sonoma and then going to Paso. I mean, was it the same varietals that you were trying to grow, or did you have to kind of learn a different grape and kind of the weather and the climate, and it affected things? Did you have to kind of reteach yourself a little bit about winemaking?
Yeah, you every area is different. Every vineyard is different. And when our main variety up in Sonoma was Zinfandel. It's what we were most known for. We were one of the original big 4 R's of Zinfandel, and Paso was known for Zinfandel. So that was a fairly smooth transition. What was really different is up there we were in the Russian River Valley, which made really great Chardonnay. And so I thought down here in Paso, we're in a fairly cool area, I'd be able to make some nice Chardonnay too. And about the first 10 years, I just hated our Chardonnay. And over the last 3, it's gotten pretty good. And I said to my wife a long time ago, because that's her favorite wine, Chardonnay, I said, God, Chardonnay sucks in Paso Robles. But what turned out what sucked was the winemaker, because I wasn't doing it right.
So were you really just following what the kind of the process you had up in Sonoma, that you were just kind of trying to figure that out and going, why in the world isn't it tasting the same?
Yeah, pretty much.
So you just had to kind of figure a few things out, tweak it a little bit, and now you've gotten it kind of where she likes it a lot.
Well, she's always liked it, but actually now I like it too.
Okay. I guess that matters a lot too. The winemaker needs to like what he's putting in the bottle.
It helps.
Especially if you got to sell it, right? You got to really like it if you're going to sell it.
Well, no, actually, it's the opposite. If you like it, you don't really have to worry about selling it, because you know you can drink it.
You just put it down in your little bunker.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the dynamic? I'm going to let you explain to the listeners the relationship and how it came to be with Serrano wines. I'll let Bryce and Sarah tackle that, or whoever wants to jump in on that one. You guys are related, and this is kind of I'm calling it 2 wineries, but it's like one big family, right? You guys are kind of in this together.
Yeah, I'll let Bryce and Sarah handle that one.
How is Serrano related? How are we related? Well, obviously, Rabbit Ridge is, where we work full time and where we got started in wine. But pretty early on, we realized, we kind of have a knack to this, and I thought we could, just use our own creativity, create our own brand from that. And thankfully, my parents have always been very supportive of that journey that we wanted to take. And so, yeah, I mean, it started small. We just thought, we kind of wanted to create a brand that would be, something that younger wine drinkers, especially like us, that we could, really market to. But then at the same time, we wanted to make a wine that was still appreciated by, experienced wine drinkers. So from the beginning, that was always kind of our goal. And that's how we got started.
And I want to expand on that a little bit by, Eric has been doing this since 1981. And I think when we talked previously, you told me you guys really started in 2015. Is that the right year?
Yeah.
And when we talk about, when I think about a young person in wine, and I think most people think this way, we think that they are probably from a family in wine, and you are, but you didn't grow up in wine country. You and Bryce didn't grow up, working, all the time in vines. Kind of tell us that story. You guys kind of on the other side of the coast, not from California. You're from the other end. Tell us kind of how that all worked out and how that came to be.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up mostly in Florida. I was around wine just because my mom married Eric when I was about 5 years old. So I was introduced to this area very young. But I went to school in Florida. I grew up mostly in Florida. And so from that, I never really thought of wine as a part of life. It wasn't really day to day for me. And then Bryce came from South Georgia, and obviously there's no wine over there, so winemaking. And both of us grew up and went to college even for different things. And I was studying, economics, and Bryce was studying marketing, and we didn't ever really have the idea to go into wine until we started. Well, we vacationed out here, and while we were in college, and it was actually Bryce that really kind of fell in love with it. But before that, he really didn't have any, introduction. He had no idea about this lifestyle of really what went into it. But he just kind of had a calling and pretty much convinced me to go work for my parents and just take a chance and start making wine.
And I think that's great. And I think if I remember right, Bryce, Sarah said you guys vacationed, but I think you remembered. I remember you telling me you actually worked when you went out there, right? Eric put you to work.
Right. So for me, it was an internship. Sarah vacation. She spent a lot of time by the pool in front of the TV that summer.
With a glass of wine.
I don't even know if Sarah was into wine at that point.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
It was. So Sarah, oddly enough, didn't drink a lot of alcohol even in college. She was a great designated driver for that, but it was actually the summer after we graduated where she kind of found the passion for it. When we started working with it together, she was like, "Oh, well, this wine tastes better than this, and this is why," and started figuring out her palate. But yeah, that initial summer, a lot of work and a little bit of play.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Now, one thing I want to ask, you guys are young into wine, but it seems like you've had, just, I don't want to call it instant success. I know you guys have put a lot of work into this and had a plan. But when I think about wine, you guys in your winery, you do everything, right? You guys are the winemakers. You're out working in the field. You're pushing down the grapes in the barrels when they need to be. You're doing everything that it takes to put the wine in the bottle, right?
Yep, we are.
So how do two young winemakers, how do you develop your palate? For somebody like me who's been drinking for just a few years, I'm still trying to, get my palate where I can identify, certain things in wines, good things, balance, whatever. You guys obviously have just a natural skill to be able to do that, a good palate just right out of the chute, or did you really have to work on that by really exploring all the different foods and really developing, eating those things so you could recognize it in the wine? How does that work?
Rob, I'm going to cut in. Rob,
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to say, Mom's going to cut in and say, practice makes perfect.
That's what I would think.
So they really experimented, and I just have to say they really studied to perfect that.
And is that, I hear a lot of people say that you have to eat like, the currant and the raspberries and, all the different things that could be flavors in wine to kind of get your palate to recognize those things in wine. Is that something that is really true?
For us, we're just now getting into that part of it.
Okay.
Honestly, the first couple of years, Eric told us, make wine that tastes good to you. If you can't sell it, you have to drink it. And those first few vintages, we would taste around Paso. We've been to Italy and we've been to France, and we've studied with people and seen, what can define the qualities that we like. It actually hasn't been until here recently. We have a friend who's studying for his WSET 3, and he'll bring in 3-4 bottles a weekend and blind taste with us, so we can start identifying the common components. But we try to think a little more outside of the box. We're not looking for specific flavors. It's just what tastes good.
And you know what? I think that's a great point. I think that's if it tastes good to you. I think that was great advice from Eric. If it tastes good to you, then you should be able to sell it. I mean, people are going to like the flavor. There's going to be enough people who like the same flavors that you do, probably. That's a great point. I didn't even think about it that way. I'm thinking of somebody who's drinking wine and trying to learn about wine. You guys are making wine, so the key there is to make sure it tastes good. And I'm sure Eric was probably a help in that regard. Was he?
Right. He does. Yeah. First couple blends, he wouldn't taste because he didn't want to influence their palate. Now, fortunately, Joanne never turns down a free glass of wine, so she helped us a little bit. But, I mean, you know, we really put our teeth on the concept of we've got to stand behind this product. It has to fit our regulations, and then we can go from there.
So tell everybody a little bit about, I mean, you guys are in the Central Coast appellation, right? And the AVA is Paso Robles. So this is a big appellation in California.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it might be the biggest. I'm not sure. It's pretty huge. They've subdivided it into like 11 different sub-appellations, and each one is different. Each one is dramatically different.
And how does Paso, as far as size? I mean, when people think about Napa, I mean, Napa's fairly small, I would say, as far as in Napa Valley. You know, from top to bottom, size-wise, is it similar? Is it a small area, Paso?
The population's small. I think it's 15, 20,000 maybe, 25,000. 30 now.
Okay, it's really small.
But like if you were to drive around the whole Paso Robles appellation, like if I were to start at Rabbit Ridge Winery and make a loop to drive around the appellation, it would probably take 3 or 4 hours. It's just that big. It covers that much ground.
I thought it was a little bit, bigger than what you might going from north by Calistoga down to Napa in the valley. I thought it might be a little bit bigger than that. I wasn't sure.
Oh, you're saying Paso.
Yeah, I mean, basically, in Paso, like you could start at our winery, and by the time you drive out to the winery the furthest west of town, that's probably 25 miles, and then from there you drive 25 miles south, all the way to like Santa Margarita, and then you can probably drive 20 miles east, and it even extends about 5 miles north. So it's a huge appellation in terms of distance and square miles or however they measure that.
So
that's the Central Coast.
No, it's just Paso.
That's just Paso.
Yeah,
it's just Paso.
Yeah, it's just Paso.
So if somebody's coming out to visit, I mean, I'm trying to think how you would set that up logistically. I guess you have to look at, your all's area and wineries that you want to go to. Are enough of them close by to each other that you can, it's a nice visit for people?
Oh, yeah. You can pick an area, and then there's clusters of wineries kind of within each appellation or sub-appellation. And, it's sort of like Napa Valley. There's so many wineries that are just off Highway 29.
Right.
You could spend 4 days on Highway 29, and Paso Robles, you would just go to almost to a different area every day, because unless you go someplace like where Sarah and Bryce are downtown, where there's a bunch of wineries, tasting rooms, or to one of the other areas, you can really only do about 3 or 4 wineries in a day here.
That seems to be about, I think whenever you go somewhere to look at wines, that's probably the number. So you can still do that there. Okay. I was just wondering how spread out, how much, acreage each winery had, if it was spread out a little bit more, but it sounds like it's very similar to when people go to Napa or to Sonoma. You get that same kind of feel of being able to pop into a lot of different wineries.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I think about Napa Valley, I also think about food. That's become a big thing when people go visit wine places, having good food available to them. How is Paso when it comes to having food available and things like that, the town of Paso?
I'll turn that over to Joanne.
Great restaurants?
I'll turn that over to Joanne.
Okay.
Yeah, Joanne will know that more than me. She's actually done her own cookbook, so she's the foodie of that.
Oh, nice.
Well, so are you asking the availability of food in our region, like, the restaurants and that type, or internal restaurants and wineries?
Well, just yeah. Do you have a good amount of them? Are they really good, or is Paso becoming known for having great cuisine as well? When you think about going to Napa, and I'm not just talking about the French Laundry and high end places like that, but there's some really good call them diners and dives or whatever you want to call it that you can go in and get just a great meal. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but there's just good food all over the valley. Is that kind of what's popping up in Paso as well? Is it already there?
Yes, actually, it's taken a while, but we are known for having some of the top restaurants really in the Central Coast. Even down south, Eric and I go to Santa Barbara a little bit, and we realize, we are fortunate. There aren't a lot, but we have more than most. We have more than probably San Luis Obispo. We have every type of cuisine, obviously Italian, Mexican, French. But both Eric and I traveled a lot to Europe, so we do like French Laundry, and we do like really great fine restaurants.
Sure.
But we do have wonderful dive bars here.
Yeah.
We have, great restaurants. We have great upscale restaurants. They're not on every block, but we are becoming one of the food towns, I believe, in the Central Coast. So
yeah.
we are keeping up with that.
I think wine just kind of helps bring that in, right? I would think.
Yeah, when I first got here, the only place you could eat after about 7 o'clock at night was Jack in the Box.
Is that right?
Yeah. And now there's a lot of good restaurants, and they all follow the wine industry out here.
In fact, what you can't find out here are the larger sort of corporate restaurants, I call it, like an Outback or, we even, the big chain restaurants. Our town really is sort of not for that, even though I grew up in Tampa Bay, and I like some of those.
I was gonna say good, because I always like, when you travel, I like eating at places that we don't necessarily have in our own backyard. It's something that's unique to you all over there. So that's kind of why I was asking about it, because it's always fun to go someplace and try something new.
Right.
So getting back to Paso as far as wine, and again, I know I keep going back to, Napa and what's grown there, but I think that's just a good reference for people who are into wines. In America, they think Napa first. The soil, the type of grapes, what's different about Paso than, what they might think of traditionally for, wines in the States. I mean, typically you're going to think, Cabernet, Merlot, and the other reds that might, in that Bordeaux blend. Whites are big Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. But when we talk about Paso, what's different there?
I think predominantly it's the soil. If you go through Napa Valley, anybody that drives through Napa Valley, you'll kind of see this darker, heavier clay soil, and which is absolutely spectacular for Cabernet Sauvignon. And we have some of that down here too, but the big difference is the calcareous or limestone character of the soil. And if you come through here after the first weeds are kind of dished up in the springtime, especially where we are, we're in like the Willow Creek district, and the ground is just white from all the limestone. And that white soil lets us get a real minerality character in the wine, and lets us make some of the wines that are really grown well in the Rhone, Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, especially. And then white Rhones like Viognier, Roussanne, and Marsanne grow really, really well here. And I don't think those grow that well in other parts of the state. And I think the main difference would probably be soil. And, everybody thinks Paso Robles is really, really hot. But actually, in all the years I've been here, Napa Valley always starts harvesting before we do. And right now it's been kind of an early spring, and Napa Valley already has leaves on their vineyards up there. And we still haven't had bud break down here.
Really?
So, we do get some hot spots spikes and some hot days. But all in all, we usually start harvest later than Napa, and the vines start growing later than Napa.
Is that also because the nights get so cool?
Very cold. And I think somebody said Paso Robles has some of the most 50-degree temperature swings that per year of any place. And 40 degrees is just commonplace in the summertime. It'll be like 90 or 95 during the day, and it could be in the low 40s at night.
That's a big jump in temperature, big swing.
Yep.
So
Sarah's from Florida, and whenever we sit out on the deck at night and have a glass of wine in August, by 6:30 at night, she's putting on a sweatshirt because she's cold.
Yeah, and if I'm thinking like Sarah, I don't know if she likes that or not. I don't know how she is, but I'd be very jealous because in Texas, I think it's similar weather to Florida, where it's 100 during the day with 100% humidity, and at night it's 90 with 85% humidity, so it's still muggy and sticky. So I'm very jealous.
Yeah. Actually, the first time Joanne's dad was in Paso, he was listening to the radio, and he came out and he said, "This is just impossible. The radio was lying." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And because it was about 85, and he said the humidity is 7. He goes, "It's impossible for the humidity to be 7." So he went to the store and bought a home weather kit, so he could just see for himself that the humidity is that low.
And? Did he
was.
It was. That's a great story. So the wines, the grapes that you're making with, Grenache and Syrah, Mourvedre, Petite Syrah, I mean, for me, I don't want to say I stumbled onto Paso, but I knew Paso just by some of the bigger producers that I would see in the store, but it wasn't necessarily something I was drawn to. Those particular varietals from those bigger producers from that area were still Cab, most of all. It wasn't until I started exploring the Rhone Valley in France and getting into some of those wines and doing a little research that I stumbled on an article that talked about Paso and some of the great things that they were doing in making those type of wines. Am I just kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit here, or is this just kind of popping up and Paso's starting to really become, more well known for what they're doing?
I think the problem you have, and probably most of the United States has, is the smaller wineries, the Paso Robles, are not distributed anywhere. So you'll never find them in the store. The stuff you find in the store are the bigger wineries that make make Cabernet, and
right.
It's probably not the highest quality Cabernet in Paso, because there are some really great Cabernets in Paso, but you'll probably never find them in the store because those wineries are too small to be distributed anywhere. So it's kind of hard to get to know it when you can't find it. So it's only people like you that kind of research it out and say, hey, there's got to be something to Paso, and they'll reach out to a winery or come out here and start tasting the wines, and it's like, oh my God, there's stuff going on there that's great.
Yeah, and that's quickly what I found out, and just being able to find a few of the types of wines we're talking about from Paso in some little wine shops here in the Houston area, but also getting some from you. But everything I see from the bigger producers is just Cab. Do they, when I think about Justin or Austin Hope or J. Lore or some of those that are out there, do they also make GSMs and Syrahs and things like that? We just don't see it. They keep that kind of local.
I think mostly they make small amounts of those wines, so I don't know how widely they're distributed.
And the reason I'm asking that question, I'm just trying to figure out, is everybody going to, what the soil and what we were talking about with, it's more, that type of soil is more for these types of grapes. and so people are starting to make GSMs and, you know, just the Petite Syrahs and things? Or are people in that area still, for the most part, still trying to make cabs?
The bigger wineries and the bigger varietals that they make is always going to be cab, because there's just not enough of the other grapes.
Okay.
But on the other hand, if you get to the smaller wineries around here that make cab, you're going to find some Cabernets that rival Napa Valley at about a third the price or a quarter the price.
Wow.
So Cabernet does grow really good down here, but you pretty much have to get into the west side of Paso Robles and in Willow Creek and Adelaida up into the hills at the higher elevation. And when you get up there, you're going to find just fabulous Cabernet.
And that's kind of why I wanted to do this show, because I've really enjoyed and I'm just kind of getting into it, just on the tip of exploring Paso, but I've really been very pleased in what I found so far. And I want people to know that there's really some cool things going on and some great wines being made by you all out there. And I think you're exactly right. My wife and I are members at several different places in California. And all of them, to your point, Eric, are those small, you know, boutique type wineries where it's people like you. It's the family members who are actually running the business and you know, farming the land and, you know, doing the grapes and doing everything. And we just have found over the years that that's the best wine. At least that's what we enjoy the most, the wine that those people make. So hopefully more and more people will start exploring this and finding this.
Kind of the problem everybody that is kind of facing the wine industry in general is it's had such consolidation in the people that sell the wine. They're just very, very big. So a winery is going to be at 30 or 40 or 50,000 cases. A wine distributor doesn't really even want to deal with them because they're just too small. The distributor can only put so many brands in their sales, and the sales book is already loaded to the hill. Gotcha. So they really don't want to bring in a wine that everybody gets excited about, and then 2 months later it's gone.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, for a business, I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
but something that's going to be in stock all year round. And in Paso, I would say probably 85% of the wineries are under 3,000 cases, maybe 5,000 cases. They're very small.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a tremendous amount of them, like Sarah and Bryce, that are about 1,000 cases. That make some of the best wines you're going to find in the town.
So I guess the key point here would be we need to go visit. We need to go explore and just kind of check it out. It sounds like.
Yeah, we're like visiting Texas. We're pretty down home friendly out here.
All right. Well, that's our next stop. My wife and I have already said our next visit is going to be come to Paso and check it out and come see everything that you guys have to offer. And we're looking forward to that.
That'd be great.
Bryce and Sarah, you guys are young winemakers. And I think kind of tell me your approach. I think you're taking I don't know if it's a different approach, a new approach, but you have kind of what you're trying to do as far as wine and who you're trying to kind of target as, you know, people who will buy your wine and appreciate your wine and get to enjoy your wine. Tell us what you're doing with Serrano.
So, with Serrano, we wanted to make a wine that was, you know, of a certain quality, obviously, but still very drinkable and approachable, so that, you know, specifically younger wine drinkers could get into wine and not drink a bunch of crap that you're going to get in a grocery store. Because I just know when we were getting into wine, I was very frustrated. It was either like super tannic Cabernets or like kind of wimpy, watery, but easy to drink wines. And I'm like, why is there nothing kind of in between here? And so we always wanted to, you know, make something that is so approachable but doesn't lack complexity and body. Because I know, like, younger people want good wine too. And just about trying to, we just want to create something that they can appreciate and can get them started on this journey of finding quality wine. But yeah, I mean,
Well, one thing you mentioned to me too, which I thought was, great, was you're aware of young people being on a budget, but you don't think that should, preclude them from being able to enjoy good wine. That you're trying to make sure you have that balance of making really good wine, not going to be cheap, but it's going to be, somewhat affordable so people can enjoy a good wine at a good price, but it's going to be a really good value.
Yeah, so I'd say, I mean, when you look at our wines, compared to what you get in the grocery store, yes, they're higher. But they are a premium item. And so, but within that, when you also look at other wineries in this area, wineries that get grapes from vineyards close to us and very similar to us, their prices are double, triple what we're doing. So we're very aware of, keeping our prices affordable, but there is still a value to this product. And it is still, it does cost money to put wine in the bottle. So
Absolutely.
we're making such little amounts, we can't compete with grocery store prices. But when it comes down to, we're trying to keep it affordable enough that we hope people can find the value in our product, that it is worth it for them.
So how would you and Bryce describe your style of winemaking? And I asked that because I think I read somewhere that you're trying to kind of keep that old world style of winemaking. Would that be fair?
Yeah, so I would say I like to think of our style as very balanced between old world and new world. And in anything, I think everything we do, we're always trying to find just a good balance, because I think each style, when you're specifically talking about old world and new world, they each have, pros and cons. And it's not really our job to say one is better than the other, but for what we're trying to produce, it's beneficial for us to look at kind of everything that both styles use and the techniques they utilize. And we can kind of pick and choose. And thankfully, being in California, we have the freedom to make wine really however we want. But at the same time, the traditional kind of old world way of making wine, it's been used for a long time, and they make good products, and it shouldn't be, put to the side merely because it's been done. I think we try and talk to these winemakers from France and Italy and figure out, why do you do your wines this way? How do you make your wines better? And then we take that knowledge back with us, and we can use it while still kind of expressing our own style, with being able to blend whatever we want, being able to have, almost higher alcohol wines and being able to be a little more expressive with our products. But I think we're just trying to, create the best product possible. And within that, we are going to use every tool that we can, and not necessarily stick to one style merely because it is what it is.
So you guys are always kind of tweaking and playing and experimenting and trying to think outside the box a little bit to see what you can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, we want to approach everything with an open mind.
Sure.
I think one thing with wine is so many people have this idea in their head of what wine should be, what wine tasting should be, what this varietal should taste like. And I think that is the beginning of the end for, wine knowledge, because there's so much to this industry on tasting and in wine making. I mean, the studies that camp colleges and researchers are doing, we don't know nearly close to what we could about wine. And so in anything, we always try to approach it with an open mind, and we can always be okay saying, maybe this isn't the best way to do it. Maybe there is something better. And I mean, we want to make sure we always grow.
Yeah.
We've only been making wine for 5 years. We definitely don't know it all, and we don't ever want to presume that.
Well, I think you're taking a great approach, and I love that you're willing to try new things and you're open to always exploring and seeing and experimenting and doing things. Because I think in the end, hopefully that, and I think it will, just gives us a better product in the bottle and we get to enjoy that. But to your point about people who always have just kind of this mindset on wines, I think a lot of people, I think more in America have kind of, they lock themselves into a lane of wine instead of wanting to explore more varietals, more styles of winemaking, just all of those things. And hopefully people starting to see different parts of the States and maybe even going outside the States will see that wine is just this never-ending journey for us to explore and appreciate and enjoy. So I think I appreciate that you guys are doing that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I would say, just to anyone, like, drinking wine, getting into it, is you never know, like, until you try it. And it's okay if you don't like a wine, but just don't ever say no merely because it's a certain varietal or because you think it's made a certain way, because wine is to surprise you, and there's so much variety. And that's really what makes this industry so fascinating is, there's over 10,000 wineries in this country, and we're all different in some way.
Sure. One thing I saw that you all are doing in the way that you plant, and I hadn't seen this before, but it may be more common than I think it is. But, when I go to Napa, I always see the vines, a certain way on the trellises. But you guys are doing a teepee style planting. What is this?
So the teepees are a growing, it's a method of planting that is done in the northern Rhone, specifically in Côte-Rôtie and Conduit. And they plant their vines at the base of two wooden poles that come together to form a teepee shape, and the plant grows up the vine or up the pole. And so what happens is the vine itself is pretty low to the ground, but all of the foliage grows vertically up this post that's over 6 feet tall. On a normal trellis system, the foliage is usually maybe a foot and a half above the grapes, and that's all you get. You cut off the tops and you focus the energy back down into the vines. Well, on these plants, the foliage is really up to 6 feet tall, and what it does is you're creating more opportunity for photosynthesis. You're getting more energy into those vines. The leaves protect the vines better from sun and wind and animal damage. And we just, this was one of those things that we took an old world technique that it's not necessarily the greatest in terms of getting more crop, but for us, that's not the priority. We want a higher concentrated fruit with less quantity coming off the vines. And this style generally does limit the amount of vines, the amount of grapes that each vine produces. So it really is perfect for what we were trying to accomplish. Yeah. And just trying to get the best tasting fruit.
Because in winemaking, people need to understand that they may not know this. If the vine has to struggle to produce fruit, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to having our Viognier planted like that, we have about 2 acres, just over 2 acres of Viognier planted. Now on an average acre, about 2,000 vines per acre are planted. Our Viognier is planted at 8,000 vines per acre.
Oh, wow.
So what that means is they have to really fight against each other and struggle to get the nutrients out of the soil. And we're getting really, really stressed fruit. But the flavor that comes from those vines, it's really amazing.
Yeah, that's really a nice technique, and yeah, for us who drink wine, we get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, if no pun intended, right? Let's talk a little bit about the wines that you all are offering, Eric and Joanne, right now. I mean, going through what you guys are offering to people who want to look you all up, and let's give them the website. If they're going to go look you guys up and want to order wines from your website, what is it?
Just rabbitridgewinery.com.
And wines that we're going to be able to get, obviously, Joanne's favorite, the Chardonnay.
Yeah, on there we've got really 2 brands on there right now. We've got the Rabbit Ridge brand, which is about 3 or 4 wines. It's Zinfandel, a Rhone style wine, Allure, a Petite Syrah, Primitivo, and then our reserve wines are all in the Russell family vineyard label. And under that, we have Joanne's favorite Chardonnay. And then we have a Zinfandel we call OVZ. And then we have another big red Syrah, Petite Syrah Zinfandel blend called LPR. And then we have a wine called Reflection, which is a blend of Petite Syrah, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Franc. It's probably our most popular wine right now. And then we have Cabernet Sauvignon, and then we have a wine called 70, which is a Bordeaux blend. We only made 6 barrels of it and put it in special barrels that were only made from the heart of the oak tree. So the heartwood is actually a slight little pink tinge to it. And that's our biggest and baddest and most Texas wine.
Really? Okay. Do you offer on there the Tempranillo?
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have a Tempranillo also.
And one more that I just drank 2 nights ago that I really liked was the 2 nice Petites. I'm a big fan of the Petit Verdot and the Petite Syrah, and I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. That was a really good wine.
Yeah, that it's really funny. You were talking about winemaking, and Sarah mentioned how things change all the time. And that wine came to be one year when I had, it was the last day of harvest, and we only had 1 tank, and the tank would hold 20 tons. And I thought I was going to get enough to just go in there. I'm sorry, we had 2 tanks. We had a 10-ton tank and a 20-ton tank. And I picked 10 tons of Petite Syrah, but the Petit Verdot picked out a little bit less. And so I had a choice. I could either have the 20-ton tank only be half full, or I could just put the 2 of them together. And so I said, oh, what the heck? And I just put the 2 of them together. It made the absolute best. It made the best wine of the whole harvest season.
And to your point earlier, if it didn't work out, you'd just put it in a bottle and drink it at your house, right?
Yeah. So we just bottled it up. And it's kind of funny because the same thing happened this year, and we actually named the wine. It's in the barrel. It's not in the bottle or anything. It's still aging, but we call it Texas Cuvée.
Really?
And it comes from a vineyard. Yeah, we have it in a vineyard it's actually on a road called Texas Road. And one day we were picking the grapes, and we had some Cabernet and some Merlot, and I left over. They wouldn't fit into the tanks they were going to go into, and I said, "Oh, let's just put them together." So we put them together, and it tasted really good, just as juice. And I said, this probably be pretty good if we added some Petite Syrah to this. So the next day we picked some Petite Syrah, and then the next day later we picked a little more Petit Verdot and blended it all together, and it might be the best wine we have of this harvest.
And that was from 19?
In 2019, yeah.
Wow.
It's nothing we were planning on making. We just kind of, Sarah, Bryce, and I, we just kind of figured it out at harvest, and we just kept, adding grapes to the tank, and pretty soon it's pretty darn good.
That's pretty cool. That's kind of the fun of winemaking, right? Doing those kind of things, I would assume.
Yeah, and the other thing about winemaking is no matter how much you plan, you never know what you're going to do the next day.
Yeah.
Or you never know how the next day is going to turn out. So every day is a new day.
That wine sounds interesting. Is it going to be bottled this year, the end of this year? No, it'll be next year.
Yeah, it'll probably be the end of next year. Yeah.
Next year.
We got to come up with a name for it. So maybe your listeners could come up with a name for it.
We'll ask them to make that suggestion. Absolutely. You're going to get a lot of Texas stuff being suggested. Something with Texas.
Hey, It came from Texas Road Vineyard.
That's what I was going to say. They're going to be, most of them are Texas people, so they're going to be absolutely asking to have that thrown in there, that Texas name. I do, while we're talking about your wines, Eric, you and I were talking just a little bit about, you're doing something really cool, and I don't know if it's been done before or not. Maybe it has, but you're kind of collaborating with an Italian winemaker, and you're kind of putting a bottle together, right?
Yeah, I've always had a real love for Sangiovese, and it's been really it's one of the grapes that we haven't been able to find down here. And I went to Italy, and we found a winemaker that we just were really bonded with in Italy, in San Germano, and we brought back in bulk containers 3,000 liters of his Chianti Classico. And then we took that 3,000 liters of Chianti Classico and we blended it with our Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Franc to make kind of an international super Tuscan wine. So we blended them all together, mixed it up, and put the wine back into bigger barrels. It's aging at the winery now, and we're probably going to bottle it up this summer. And we're going to label that with a special label, and it's going to be called Passone Divina.
That sounds really cool. I will tell you, my wife's favorite varietal is a Sangiovese, so she's going to definitely want a piece of this. Absolutely.
Yeah, this winery in Italy, his wines don't come to the United States. He just sells it all, mostly around Florence and in San Germano. And the wine is fabulous. We spent 10 days touring wineries in Italy, and his wine was the best wine we had in Italy.
Is this something new, Eric? Is this something that, have you heard of this being done before? Is this something where you're going, this is kind of, I've not heard of a winemaker in Italy or France and in the U.S. kind of combining. Has that been done before?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably not. And the nice thing about it is, it's hard to a lot of times it's hard to get two people on the same page, but Danielle in Italy, he's just like we are. He's total family oriented, total small winery, small production, hands-on. He does absolutely everything himself. And we're both kind of like kindred spirits in the wine world with very similar passions. And that's why we named it Divine Passion, because it's from two very passionate wine families.
That's awesome. I mean, I can't wait to try it. And you said it's going to go into the bottle later this summer. Is it going to age in the bottle, or is it going to be ready to be purchased?
We'll probably let it age in the bottle a little bit, and hopefully be released in the fall.
Okay, very cool. I'm looking forward to that one. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a very famous Italian wine that I really fell in love with in my first Super Tuscan, Antinori Tignanello, and I really like the wine. And I think one of the inspirations to doing this wine is that wine had become so expensive that I can't afford to buy it anymore.
Okay, yeah, I was about to ask you, is that the Tignanello I'm thinking of? That's $150 or more.
Yeah, but when I first had it, it was $39.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And it's 100%. Is it 100% Sangiovese, isn't it?
It's about 80% Sangiovese
okay.
and 20% Cabernet Franc.
Wow. I didn't realize I haven't been in wine as long as you, obviously, but I didn't know it was at any point that low in cost. That's yeah.
Yeah, in the old days, things were different.
Yeah, obviously. Well, Sarah and Bryce, let's talk about when people go to, is it SerranoWinery.com? Is that the website?
It's Serrano Wine, singular.com.
SerranoWine.com. And wines that you all are making and have available, people want to kind of order some bottles. Let's talk about what you guys are offering right now.
So we have a pretty good variety. We do Viognier, 100% Viognier, and that's probably what we're most known for. And then we do a couple of red blends. So we actually have a few wines that are named after Harry Potter references. So that's been fun to kind of market to fans of those stories. But we make a GSM called Horcrux, which is from the stories. And then we make a Zinfandel and Petite Syrah blend called Firebolt. We make a Petite Syrah heavy blend with Syrah and Cab, and that one's called Knox.
Okay.
And then we make a Cab. We actually just released our 2017 Cabernet last week, and it's absolutely fantastic. I think our 17 vintage was the strongest we've ever done, and this Cab is, if you're a Cab fan, it's absolutely fantastic.
Awesome. Those sound like great wines as well. But you, as well as Eric having his special wine, you and Bryce over the last few years have been putting something together. And I think last time we chatted a little bit, it's been in the barrel for a while, and this is really cool. And I know it's at an awful time that, we're kind of talking about it as far as the tragedy that just happened, but I'm not going to say anymore. I'm going to let you kind of talk about what this wine is and who it's a tribute to.
So we realized, a few years ago that our 5-year brand anniversary was approaching, and we knew we wanted to make a really special wine to commemorate that. So with the 17 vintage being so strong, it was kind of the perfect opportunity to make a blend. And we were trying to think of a name that was very meaningful to us and just our journey as winemakers and as business owners. And so we are both big Kobe Bryant fans, and so we decided to name our wine Mamba, just to kind of represent the Mamba mentality of, every day just trying to be better than you were before, and approaching each day like an opportunity to better yourself and better your brand for us. And so we named it, 2 years ago, and we'd always had the dream of sharing our wine with Kobe, but unfortunately that will not be possible. But we're still, moving forward making the wine because, if we're being honest, Kobe, he would never give up. So.
No, he was absolutely that Mama mentality that you talked about. It absolutely was with him. He was somebody who just strived for perfection and, never got less than 100% from that guy. And I think you all doing that, and it's unfortunate that the tragedy happened because I think, Kobe would have just been honored to receive a bottle of wine that was made, in his honor for his mentality of striving for perfection. And I think part of it, when we talked before, was you and Bryce were also athletes and kind of grew up as athletes, kind of looking at him as an athlete and trying to kind of follow that, and that kind of carried over into the wine world as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when is this wine going to be bottled, available? Is it going to be a while? What are we looking at for this wine for people to be able to get it?
So we bottled it last year, but we're going to release it in October. So October of 2020 is the official 5-year mark of Serrano, and so it will be released this coming October.
Are you doing any kind of future sales on it? Can people buy it now and ship it in October, or do they have to wait to buy it until October?
We're creating an email list for the release, but as of now, it's being released first to our wine club members.
Okay.
And then it will then go to the waiting list that we have created. So.
And can we ask, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but price point on this particular wine?
I'm not entirely sure yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people.
It won't be anything. But
yeah, people are going to be excited.
We only made 75 cases.
That's it. So we have to cross our fingers that it gets outside the wine club members, and some of the other people might hopefully get a chance to get a bottle or two.
Yeah.
That's a small production.
Want to create the demand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about wine club. I mean, if it's going to go to wine club members first, tell us about your wine clubs, what the options are there, and, kind of how it works.
Yeah, so we offer, we do a pretty basic club just because we don't have a bunch of employees to manage it for us. But we currently are doing a 6 and a 12 bottle club, but we're in the process of adding a 3-bottle club. And it's twice a year. It's in the spring and the fall. And, we decided to start offering a 3-bottle club because, kind of what we were talking about before, we want our wines to be accessible to everyone. And I know 6 bottles, can be a bit of a commitment for some people, especially, the younger generation that we're still kind of hustling and making money. So we decided to start offering a smaller commitment. So just to get people introduced to our wines, and then hopefully, as we all grow older, we can kind of get more into the 6-bottle clubs in the future. And yeah.
Absolutely. Now, when they join the wine club, can they pick like a whites, a reds, a mixed? Can they pick each shipment? Do you make some suggestion? And then if they say, well, I'd like to have these 3 or these, whatever, how does it work?
So we offer either a mixed option or an all red option. We currently allow our case members to customize, but the 6-bottle and 3-bottle clubs are winemaker's choice.
Okay.
We make, a lot of wines specifically for the club, and we have to allocate a certain number.
Sure.
So we don't have too many case numbers, so we can allow them to, as another perk of their commitment to us, we allow that customization. But yeah, otherwise we ask our club to kind of take what we give them, and we're always trying to make something new and just expose our club to different wines and kind of keep their minds open.
No, absolutely. I think that's great. Okay, Sarah, on ordering wine from the wine club, do you have anything on shipping? How does shipping work?
Yeah, so currently through at least the end of March, we're doing a shipping special because we know everyone's in a bit of a tight spot right now with the pandemic happening, and we wanted people still to be able to get their wines at an affordable price. So we're offering $1 shipping on 3 or more bottles throughout the entire country. And the way to do that is you just go to our website, put at least 3 bottles in the shopping cart, and then the promo code is wash your hands with no spaces, and that will give you $1 shipping throughout the month.
Wash your hands. I love it. That's the code.
We try and at least keep it humorous while we can.
And I think it's great that you're offering that, because if you're going to be locked in your house and they want you to self-quarantine or not move around so much, you might as well have some good wine while you're sitting there in your home, right, playing cards or watching TV.
Exactly. That is exactly what we were thinking. And
just so I have it right,
we're all doing our.
Say that again.
We're all doing our part to drink the resveratrol. The red wine qualities are.
That's that.
Just, we believe in that, so we're doing our red wine resveratrol.
I'm drinking more than normal just so I get enough of that in my system. Is that a good thing?
I'm with you. I am too.
So Sarah, is S on hands, right? Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
All right, perfect.
No spaces.
We will get that out to everybody. I'll also put it on my big Facebook group and make sure everybody knows there once I announce the episode as well. So that's great. That's great that you guys are doing that.
Wonderful.
Eric, talking about your wine club as well. Can we tell everybody what you offer for wine clubs?
We have like a regular 6 wine club where you get 6 bottles twice a year, and they're kind of our more affordable wines. And then we have a regular mixed 6, and then we have a reserve 6, and a reserve mix. And with the reserves, you'll always get the very best wines that we have.
Okay.
We also ship twice a year, like Sarah. So we do spring and fall.
Is that April, March? When do you ship?
But usually every March.
Okay.
Every March and every October. And
Okay.
we have so many members that cross over between our two families that we now ship them together. So we ship Serrano and Rabbit Ridge, Russell Family.
Boy, that's a great
on the
point,
same-
Joanne.
Yeah, so it's been great. Everybody's getting introduced to each of our own wines, and we're getting combined members. And we also allow a little bit of customization on our members that commit to us. And that's just part of customer service we found with any club. That seems to be the number one thing people want is flexibility and talk to the owners and know that we are thinking of them and their financial situation and their taste and their, what it is that they want to do. So we try to be flexible, but as Sarah said, we have to also produce wine in preparation for the wine club. So we do suggest and have winemakers suggest selections that go in the club. And then it depends on the type of member if they need to change something on a person to person.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And I do think most people join a wine club so they can explore more of the wines that you guys are making. I know I do that. But I know sometimes you fall in love with, you make one wine or whatever it might be, and you go, man, I really love that one, and I want to get one more. But that's not to say if you're in the 6-bottle club, you have no problem with somebody saying, hey, look, give me those 6, but I want to add 2 more of these and make it 8, right?
Of course, we love those add-ons.
Absolutely.
That's a wonderful part of it, certainly.
Okay. Anything else before we start to close it out here? Anything else we want to talk about with Rabbit Ridge, Russell Family, Serrano that we want to make sure that people know? Have we covered everything?
I think so.
Yeah, it all sounds good.
Okay. Well, we look forward to getting some more of your wines. We look forward to coming out and seeing you all. My wife and I are excited to do that. I appreciate you guys coming on the show and kind of letting us all know what's going on in Paso and kind of the wines you're making and specifically what you guys are doing at Serrano and at Russell Family and Rabbit Ridge. Thank you guys for that.
No, thank you.
Very welcome.
Very much.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.